scratching your head or raising your hand? What you got?
Why was God so violent during, or in the Old Testament?
Why was God so violent in the Old Testament, as opposed to not being violent in the New Testament? Or, whenever I hear this notion that somehow the God of the Old Testament is this mean, vengeful, violent, judgmental God, and then in the New Testament he's all love and grace and forgiveness, I don't see that. I actually see pretty much the same throughout. During the New Testament focuses around the life of Christ, and Christ wasn't here for judgment. He was here for a specific purpose and teaching, forgiveness, grace, sacrifice. That was his focus. But even in the New Testament, you have in Acts, I want to say chapter 5, I may be wrong, right on there somewhere, where Ananias and Sapphira lie to the church, and God just like strikes them dead for lying. And in Revelation, it talks about how Jesus is going to, there's just all this wrath being poured out. And whenever Jesus comes, you read the description of Jesus. He is not this nice, friendly, wearing white robes and soft-spoken. It says he's coming on a horse with a robe dipped in blood with a sword. It's just that the imagery is one of, look out, bad guys, it's over. But I will say this about in the Old Testament, because we see you got the flood, you have, God saying, go possess the land, and if they resist, wipe them out, right, and everything. In the Old Testament, this is the best explanation I've ever heard. In the Old Testament, whenever God is saying, whenever he is judging evil, whenever he is putting down the wrath, he is judging evil. He is pushing back against the darkness to make a place for goodness to flourish. During the flood, it says that in the time of Noah, that every thought of man was only evil continually. You think of the just worst, most despicable, wicked, mean, selfish person you know, and they probably have some nice things about them. They probably have some people they like. Maybe they treat their mom nice or something. Back in the day of Noah, nothing, ever. And so you have that, the Canaanites, that he tells the Israelites, go in there and take them out. It was judgment, because whenever you read about that culture, they would sacrifice their babies to the god Molech. And what they would do is the statue had its hands out over a cauldron, and they would build this fire up. And the metal hands would get burning red hot, and they would actually lay their children alive on the burning hands of the idol, and they would sacrifice their child to appease their God. That was the culture that he was saying, go in there and take them out. And so when you really look at what's going on in the Old Testament, whenever God is throwing down some violence, it is against some wicked, wicked, wicked evil.
Is this the case, sometimes I get my Old Testament people groups mixed up, but where God's talking to the Israelites and he says, you'll go into the land, but the sin of the Canaanites is not yet fulfilled, right? And then it actually ends up being like 400 years later that they go into the land. So he's telling them ahead of time, this is an act of judgment. You're not going to go wipe them out now because they haven't built up their sin to a level to be worthy of this kind of judgment. That's not going to happen for another 400 years.
Yeah, that's one thing they actually see is he restrains judgment. He holds it back for the last possible. Please let there be repentance. And like he was saying, he tells Abraham, this is the land I'm going to give you, but not yet. Your descendants will get it 400 years from now because these people aren't bad enough yet for me to wipe them out. And so, but you see all through the Old Testament, it's patience. God's relationship with the nation of Israel. I heard someone say it's like listening to a couple argue through the apartment wall, where it's just like it's constantly they're disobeying, and then, oh, please take me back, and then disobeying, oh, please take me back. They're just constantly sinning, and he is constantly just grace and patience and kindness and love towards them. And so it's actually, I actually see a little bit of a different story going on through the Old Testament.
And you see the narrative of sparing too in the earlier cases, right? So with the flood, right, that it's really focused on a family that was righteous, and We're not going to start totally from scratch. We have the righteous remnant who have to be saved here. And with Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham's pleading, well, you save it for 100 people, you save it for 50 people, you save it for 30 people, for 10 people, right? Don't get angry with me. I keep asking you to spare it if there's anybody righteous there at all. And God said, I'm willing to do it, but there aren't.
Yeah.